2020, the Red Roses won a second successive Grand Slam. Argentina pulled off a historic first ever win over the All Blacks. And Teddy Thomas did this. But in amongst the Zoom calls and inexplicably massively popular documentaries about Martin Johnson, this was a year in which some rugby was played by some people. And so it's time to celebrate the chunks of rugby floating in amongst the 2020 soup by bringing together the 2020 Squidge Rugby Team of the Year. And today, you're getting the shortest video on the tallest people. It's time for the best locks of the year. I'm going to use the word monumental. I can't tell you exactly why, but it feels like exactly the right collection of syllables to sum up the 12 months England and Saracens' Maro Itoje has had. Itoje has been a first-rate player for a solid 5 years now, but I don't think he's ever been better than he showcased in 2020. Gone from his game at the stupid professional fouls that didn't need to be committed, and his work rate over the ball has somehow got even higher with Eddie Jones' increased emphasis on defence this year. Itoje will finish most games he plays with the highest tackle count on the pitch, and with a few turnovers to boot, and he never goes missing an attack, always performing whatever versatile role is asked of him in that situation. However, whilst he's been, incredible for England, the two highest lights of his year came outside that white shirt. One was the now infamous quarter-final against Leinster, where he just dismantled a side who a week earlier had looked set to dominate European rugby in what was, and this is very high praise, possibly the most faultless game I've ever seen him play. And, possibly also the only 10 out of 10 performance I've seen from any player in any match this year. And I'm including Stephen Myler's performances for the Ospreys here. And then over the summer, in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, he used his platform and position within the game to spearhead a conversation about racism in rugby. Whilst this video perhaps isn't the time or place, this is a conversation that's far from over, and all of us still have a responsibility to be vigilant and active in keeping the game as open and inclusive as it preaches being all the time. And it would feel amiss, wrong even, to discuss the impact Itoje made this year without talking about what he achieved during the period where balls weren't allowed to be kicked. Because on and off the field, Itoje only continues to become more and more impressive. What we're currently witnessing is a player who we'll still be talking about in probably, 20 odd years' time, currently at the absolute peak of his powers. And speaking personally, as a Wales fan, that Lions tour can't come quickly enough. The lock position has probably changed more over the last decade than any other. However, for all the talk of pacey, young, athletic second rows becoming more and more common, for all the worth of an Itoje, a James Ryan, a Brodie Retallick, a Patrick Tuipulotu, an unracist Guido Petty, we must not lose track of one simple fact. There will always be a place in rugby, and more specifically, in the second row, for an older, harder, shithouse bastard. And so, despite the strong claims of Ryan and his teeny bopper compatriots, the standout lock not called Maro Itoje in 2020 was none other than Normandy's finest export, seasoned in South Africa and then returned home as a fully grown bastard, Bernard Le Roux. Like the position he's adopted, the France team around Le Roux has been evolving so quickly, the age profile skewing lower and lower, younger and younger, and yet Le Roux has done the very necessary job of providing grunt and niggle to a very green team. Whilst his frequent partner Paul Willemse is perhaps more of the live on the edge of the laws variety, Le Roux pushes but never breaks. He'll frustrate but he'll never infringe. Against England, he took care of the biggest ball carriers and killed their momentum. Against Wales, he single-handedly diffused the choke tackle that caused France so many problems in previous meetings. If there's a dirty job France needs doing, Le Roux does it. He doesn't complain, he doesn't ask questions, or fancy galloping out on the wing, ever. He just gets on and smashes into the task at hand with his head first. And as a converted back rower, Le Roux has been able to act as an additional turnover threat, complementing the rest of the French pack and allowing their wonderfully talented back row to fly free and play their own natural game. All great attacking teams throughout modern rugby history had a nasty little prick who loves doing dirty deeds. And by all accounts, Bernard Le Roux is a really nice fella, but he's turned himself into exactly that kind of guy and exactly the player France need if they're going to do anything going forward, and he's excelled in doing so. There will always be a place in the second row for that. Whilst Atojo was completely nailed on, James Ryan did very almost sneak in over LaRue after an incredible year for Leinster and some very, very impressive form for Ireland, including in games where they perhaps didn't do much winning, while Sam Whitelock remained excellent and Patrick Tuipulotu stood out for the All Blacks, particularly the Blues and Aotearoa. Matt Phillip was a revelation for the Wallabies for similar reasons to LaRue with France, shoring up their set piece and just doing all the dirty stuff so nicely. And look, I'm not sure which video I should include talking about Poppy Cleland, but it might as well be here. Because she changed positions like she was struggling to get to sleep and yet was so utterly sublime in all of them. I honestly half expected to turn up and play fly half and wing in the World Cup next year just so she can shout full house. It's been a good year for locks, but it's been an especially good year for that handful. That was the second row. Tomorrow we have the back row. Yesterday we had the front row. If you want to go and look for that, that is available elsewhere on the channel, as is plenty more, if that's what happens to tickle your reasonably still new year. Fancy, I hope you're having a wonderful time, and I will see you tomorrow for more back row of the year. Thank you for the support the channel on Patreon. It enormously helps me continue doing it, in this kind of vivacious manner. Yeah, I hope you're well, and I'll see you tomorrow.